Hi, everyone.
Evening.
We'll just give people a few minutes to join and we'll get started.
I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands across Australia on which we're meeting today and pay my respects to elders past and present. Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you here. My name's Pam. I'm the National Sales Manager for World Expeditions. And tonight we're talking about one of the most unique and unforgettable ways to explore the ocean, and that's sailing on a Pinisi. I'll hand you over to Rachel now, who's our brand manager for On-Water Expeditions, and then I'll come back and explore Palau with you before we open the floor up for any questions. Over to you, Rach.
Thanks, Pam. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So happy to have you all here. I'm going to start out tonight by telling you, for those who don't know, a little bit about what a Pinisi is. So a Pinisi, a traditional Indonesian sailing boat, they've been around for centuries. They're handcrafted and built by the Bugis and Makassari people of southern Sulawesi. And I don't know how to explain what it feels like to get on board, but it's this history and the heritage of these boats is you feel it straight away. So much so the craftsmanship was recognized by UNESCO as one of their intangible cultural heritage list in 2017. I guess from start to finish in southern Sulawesi, the Pinisi communities, it's more than just a boat. It's more than just a boat builder working on a boat. It's an entire community. There's symbolism and ritual behind the process that is really what gives it its heart and soul. There's, from the very first piece of wood until them dropping it in the water, there's rituals and celebrations that are shared within the community. And obviously they've been doing this for centuries, moving goods and spices, people and stories throughout the islands of Indonesia. And in more recent years, the boats have been modernized, which allows travelers like us to get on this really comfortable boats with, with luxury and a little bit more facilities than previously, but to still feel that sort of heritage and sweeping masts and timber decks. So let's set sail on Panisis. So I guess we'll start out with why a Pinisi, and I'll give you a little bit of an idea about what traveling on Panisis are like, what you can expect from your day-to-day sort of itineraries, and where you can go in Indonesia. And then Pam will take us through the Palau section. So from the minute I stepped on board and felt the timber under my feet, I was like, wow, what an experience. You actually can feel that grounding sensation when you get on board. Basically, I took my shoes off because it is pretty much policy that, you won't be wearing your shoes around on these beautiful decks. And I don't think I put them on again for another 10 days, other than when we went for a hike or onto shore or whatever. But on the boat itself, it just felt so good to have that timber under your feet. On board cabins are comfortable, doubles, singles, all with en suites now. So as I said, sort of modernized. There are options to choose from. However, you really won't spend that much time in your cabin. And I think that's because the deck areas of these boats are so inviting and there's so much going on. So, up on the decks, relaxing, taking in sunsets, eating, and, your meal areas and things on board the Pinisi are up on the decks. So you just really feel connected with both the ocean and the boat when you're around the deck areas. But as I said, variety of cabins available. When you're on board, you're going to have an amazing crew and they're going to look after pretty much everything that you need. In Indonesia especially, you'll find that they're from all over Indonesia, local Indonesians. And in the kitchen and in the cabin crew and stuff, you'll find people from a lot of regions. But as soon as you go upstairs near the captain's area or the engineers or whatever, you'll pretty much work out they're all from Sulawesi. So these Bugis and Makassari people who I guess it just is their lifeblood and they'll be the ones showing you around Indonesia. And that's whether or not they're there putting the sails up, which, when the opportunity is right, it's nothing more beautiful than seeing, all the sails up and the boats in their beauty. getting you food, making up your rooms of a day, entertaining you of a night with songs and stories and regional history. They'll write up a board you can see in the corner there each day that'll tell you what you need to bring for the day, your swimmers, your camera, whether or not you need reef shoes. So they really are super attentive, and for me, they're a huge part of what makes it such a special experience. And look, they'll even make you a cocktail at the end of a hard day, and sit up on the deck with your margarita or your tequila sunrise, whatever it might be that tickles your fancy. Food on board is always fresh, amazing, with lots of variety. Sure, they can cater to dietary requirements and stuff, but I was really impressed, with a fishing license. Often the captain, who was a Sulawesi man, and very keen on fishing, he had a license. He'd go and catch the lunch while we were out having a snorkel or whatever, and the cooks would prep it up and prepare it for us. That barbecue in the front picture there on the beach. We just had a 3-hour snorkeling session, and those chicken satays were like the best thing you could ever imagine eating on the beach, straight out. So, all the meals are included. And if you're thinking that worried about dietary requirements or things like that, all of those things can be accommodated, definitely. Activities. So we like to run active base trips. That's at the core of what we do. So in terms of what you can expect, we do have itineraries throughout that specialize in kayaking and diving, as where more experience is required, and you would need screening and waivers and things like that. And Pam will touch a little bit more on that in Palau as we get in. But in terms of on every trip, there will be stand-up paddleboarding. There would be a kayak on board that would be used if the weather is good and favorable. Then people would be going out without having to have a huge amount of experience. Hikes, so getting ashore, and also snorkeling maybe 3 to 4 hours a day, depending on your interest. I will point out that the boats, especially in Indonesia, move around to coincide with trade winds and best weather. So when you're looking, we'll touch on destinations, but it's always to coincide with the best weather and best visibility in the water and things like that. So there's definite seasonality, and you'll get a good gauge of that by looking at the destinations and what time of year they run. And the boats are pretty much in the water in Indonesia all year round, following those sort of trade winds, with a couple of weeks out for maintenance and stuff in dry dock. So you can definitely be active. It'll be up near the equator. It'll be hot. All of these destinations pretty much are hot. So pack lightly, pack clothes that are lightweight, dry quick. If you're from Queensland, maybe you'll want to put a card and get through winter. You definitely won't need it. It's not a heavy packing itinerary. You'll spend the majority of your time in the water in swimmers. So, when you're planning, don't plan on bringing the whole kit and caboodle with you. If you're not interested in activity, the beauty of these trips is that you don't have to participate. None of it is A to B where you have to do hikes, you have to do this. Obviously, we want you to. That's, the aim is to get you out as much as possible. But you can lay on the beach there. That's a private beach set up. We didn't see another single person with our little umbrellas, had lunch, snorkeled all day. Wildlife, so we can take the tenders that you can see down in the waterfall image there, so we can take those to go into mangroves looking for birds, wildlife, things like that. Cultural visits, trying to especially in these regions in Indonesia, places where the tourism is very low, so the impact that we can have in communities by just buying fruit and veggies to replenish the boat, or dropping off things like reading glasses and things like that they have no access to. So getting you into those sort of things, if the activity side of it is not all you're there for, there's a really good blend of both on these trips. I'll just point out that all the trips in Indonesia and in Palau and through the Philippines take place in the Coral Triangle. So I am not a diver myself, but as a snorkeler, I was blown away by what you can witness just snorkeling. I mean, the diving is incredible as well, I know. But just corals and electric lights, like it's a whole other world. So, this region, and these marine areas, and a lot of work is going into trying to preserve more of them now. So, but yeah, really, really healthy coral areas that the trips are traversing through. And then finally, some bigger marine sort of species that we, encounter right throughout. Whale sharks, which is, in Indonesia, the fishermen have always had bagans, which are, fishing stations where they clean their fish out in the water. It's not set up for tourism, but it is an advantage that the whale sharks often like to hang around and catch all the leftover fish coming off the bagan. So it's situated out in the ocean. You will potentially have, there's no guarantees, potentially have chances to swim with whale sharks in some areas. With the whale sharks usually comes big pods of dolphins as well underneath, also feeding. The greenback turtles, stingless jellyfish, which is a weird sensation, you have to say, getting in a lake that's full of jellyfish, but they are stingless. There's some really unique marine opportunities that can be taken on the trips as well. I just want to show a little quick video. I guess what I love about this style of travel is that it's spontaneous, and that we have the opportunity to stop and move the boat and make the most of things that are happening right off the boat. And in that instant, sorry. In that instant, those dolphins, we could see them miles away, like quite off in the distance, and they just kept coming closer and closer. And we're like, are they coming towards the boat? Are they going to come near the boat? And next thing you know, they just came up from underneath the bow of the boat. So, and obviously the captain just turned the engine off and slowed down, and we got that for 15 minutes or something of them just riding the bow with us. So, those sort of flexible things that can happen just out in the sea is just such a charming part of the trip. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about destinations, and to start with, I'm going to talk about getting there. Some of these places are as far away from Bali as you could imagine, in terms of Indonesia. Some of the flight schedules are an effort. You need to go via, if you're going to somewhere like Komodo, yes, you can go via Denpasar quite easily and connect through. If you're going somewhere like Bitung or Ternate or Ambon up in the Moluccas region, even out to Sorong in Raja Ampat, Jakarta is really the easiest way. And, the timings aren't great necessarily. You are going to have to arrive a day before in case there's flight delays and things like that. All I can tell you is when you get there, it will be worth it. It'll be well worth the travel. So, although we think of Indonesia as very close to Australia, especially, it is. But when you want to go that little bit further, it does, sometimes people go, oh, it's a lot longer than I thought, or it might be, an 8-hour layover here or there. I can assure you when you get there, it will be worth it. This is out in West Papua. This village is, we saw no one else around out here. It's really, really, really spectacular. The forest is virgin, it's well worth stepping out and getting to these places. All right, I'll talk a little bit about destinations. So I'll start with Raja Ampat and West Papua. So the Bird's Head Peninsula, Raja Ampat is, a regency well known for a marine reserve. It is incredible. It's that mix of limestone karst islands, crystal clear waters, culture. So a lot of traditional villages out here, and I guess more Papuan origins, even though they speak Bahasa in Indonesian, they are more Papuan. And look, out here, you've got a 10-day itinerary in Raja Ampat, well worth it. You can do north and south out here in those 10 days. You do the northern parts of Raja Ampat and then 6 days in, say, in the southern section. If you are looking at something like whale sharks and birds of paradise itineraries, you would still do 6 full days in Raja Ampat in the southern section, and then you would sail across to West Papua and down the coast, which is just a pristine jungle, lots of small village little stops, waterfalls. So an incredible sort of diversion from just Raja Ampat has that, but I guess in Papua it's a little bit more prevalent that it's remote and not so many people get there. So that's one of your options. Out to Komodo, I guess everyone thinks of Komodo dragons, and look, who doesn't want the opportunity to see a Komodo dragon in the wilderness, and you have to go here to see them. So you fly into Labuan Bajo, which, as I said, is a little bit more accessible from Bali itself. But once you get out to Komodo, there's so much more to the area. It's very arid. It's one of the sort of arid areas of Indonesia. It's got great hikes. You obviously can do some hikes around Komodo. You can go to Rinca. The top is Banda Island, so climb up for a sunrise or a sunset. There's culture. The region is obviously they have had a tourism industry for a while, but nothing like the Balinese style. So still got that cultural element. And then also some specialized sort of kayaking itineraries. So, and again, marine life out here. I think people who get to Komodo are quite surprised by how much the underwater world is really healthy and really live. I think they go there thinking that it's all about the dragons, but they spend just as much time in the water and are amazed by what they see there in the same way as much as what they see on the land. If you want to get a little bit further afield, the Banda and Moluccas Islands, so the Spice Islands of Indonesia, and that Ring of Fire, so really volcanic sort of areas. This is where Alfred Russel Wallace spent a lot of time looking at the theory of evolution, writing letters to Charles Darwin. So there's opportunities out here for all of the things that we've already talked about, great water, swimming and all of that, but also a cultural element and historical element out here. So, you could always look at something like that, 10 days, a little bit longer, some of the itineraries, 12 or 14 days, and a little bit more remote, but certainly something of interest. And then finally, I'll just touch on the homeland of the Pinisi, Sulawesi. So trips in southern Sulawesi, if you were on a voyage, would actually stop at a Pinisi boat building village. There's an opportunity to see the boats being built and in progress. If you're going further north into northern Sulawesi, then you've got the Togoroko National Park around the Tajian Islands off Sulawesi. You've got the Baju Sea Gypsies who have been living on the water and water villages for years. So there's so much more out there, I think, than what we first think of. And so, when you are having a look at Indonesia and you're looking at timings, as I said, it's year round. So have a little look at what suits your timings or your interest or whatever. I'm sure that you can find something of interest in there. So I'm going to wrap that up there, and I'm going to hand over to Pam to tell you all about Palau. So go, Pam.
Thanks, Rach. You just want to pop on the next slide, that's us. So I was lucky enough to have spent a week on board the Pinisi, the Palau Siren in March of this year. Can I just say that if you're even considering going aboard one of these boats, just take the plunge and do it. I've traveled all over the world, and this is one of my favorite trips. Palau, I hadn't even really heard of before, and now I'm singing its praises to everybody I can talk to. So get there if you can. The Siren is made up of 8 cabins, so it will hold a maximum of 16 passengers. It comes in doubles, twins. They can have you can have a single supplement. So you can see my little bed there, made up on the first day with a little ray towel and my dry bag for kayaking. It was really, really good. It's a really beautiful wooden boat. Like Rachel said, you get on board, they take your shoes and pop them in a bucket, and you don't need to put shoes on again for the whole time you're on board. Just, yeah, absolutely relaxing. The staff and the crew was so accommodating and really, really friendly. I feel like I've made friends for life just in a week, and it was just an incredible experience. There's purpose-built dive decks as well, so you can keep all your snorkel gear away from your cabin, and the cabins are very spacious. And the good thing about the siren is that it does move while you're out doing activities. So we got straight into our kayaking trip right from day one. So we got up in the morning, we had a briefing on land, got sorted out our kayaks, and then we were all ready to go with a short practice run, and then we were off. The great thing about kayaking in these areas is that you do get to experience a real mixture of different waters. So you can be in open water, going between the rock islands. You can go right up close to the rocks and really get a good idea of what the bird life is like. And crystal clear, you feel like bottom, even though it's quite a few feet below you. We saw lots of sea life and bird life while we were out kayaking, from young sharks in the shallows at one beach, turtles in the deep waters, and lots of fish. So everywhere I'll just go back for a sec, Rach, thanks. Everywhere we kayaked, we did also have the opportunity to snorkel. And some days on this particular trip, experienced divers can go off to the dive sites. The great thing about Palau is that pretty much everywhere you can deep dive, you can also snorkel, and you can see the divers below you. That's how clear the water is. Yeah, just incredible. Yep. We saw so many different fish and coral every day. I was lucky enough to see this incredible octopus that every time I put my hand out, its tentacles would come out. It was like we were doing this little dance. And then it's quite hard to see, but the shark in the top right picture, my husband swam along the reef with that for quite a long time, and that's been his experience of his favourite experience of the trip. So just, yeah, amazing. Yeah. The meals also were incredible. I think Rachel touched on this before. All dietary requirements could be catered for. We had so much food, and there was always plenty. There was always a protein, there was always carbs, some veggies and a salad. So really great food to fuel us for the kayaking that we were doing. Or if we were going out for a snorkel first, we'd have a light breakfast and then take off. Each day we had a program up on the whiteboard. So like with Rachel's slide before, you get to know exactly what the timings are for everything. They tell you what to bring. You kind of don't have to think too hard. The map in the middle is of the rock islands of Palau, and because it's on a whiteboard, they would write each day where we had been and where we'd dived or snorkeled. Each evening after dinner, our guide Mac would give us a presentation on the TV screen. He'd show us where we'd been. He'd show us some of the photos that he took and give us a real lesson on the fish and the marine life and the birds that we'd seen. And again, too, if we were going on land, out would come the maps, and we'd get a real history lesson and a good idea of where we were about to walk. So we did learn a lot about the history of Palau while we explored, both by land and sea. We had the opportunity to free dive down to a Japanese Zero plane that had crashed, and that was really quite shallow. Like, I was snorkeling above when my husband dived down to get to the wing of the plane. We also went for a short bushwalk straight off the kayaks, and Mac showed us an old Palauan coin, which you can see we're all sitting on. That's made of rock, and they transport these on small rafts. So it's just amazing to see this history still being preserved in this wonderful country and learning about the history. We also spent one day visiting Peleliu and learning the history of the Battle of Peleliu, which was a brutal and bloody battle in World War II between the US and the Japanese. It was really interesting, and it was led by a local Palawan man who lived in Peleliu, so it was really good to get that local experience and knowledge while we were out there too. Our final night was a celebration with a barbecue on the beach. This was so nice. It was a really nice way to round off the night. We had lovely table setting, fairy lights, cocktails, and a bit of dancing too. It was really good fun. So just wrapping up, everything you do need to know, you can find on our website. You can download the trip notes or itinerary. There's frequently asked questions. You can get all the info you need. But of course, Rachel and I are always available if anyone has any questions. You can get in touch with us by phone or email. And on that, I'll open up and see if anyone did have any questions for us.
Hey, Rach.
Thanks
for joining, everyone. So I'm Angela. I'm part of the marketing team. So I've got a couple of questions that people have submitted that weren't able to make it. Rach, do you want to just stop sharing your screen and I'll flick over it? Perfect. So one of the questions was, how often do you interact or get to meet local people?
Well, I guess it would depend on the itinerary, but you would probably say on a 8-day or 9-day itinerary, you would probably have 5 of those days where you might have cultural interactions, and 5 where you would be more marine based. I guess it really does depend on the itinerary you pick. Some there would be more, others there would be less, depending on days at sea and things. But certainly they are integral to the trips as well.
Amazing. This is for both of you, Rachel and Pan. Were there any particular sites that were your favorite in Raja Ampat or Palau?
For me, the whole thing. I don't think I could pick one favorite. There was one dive/snorkel site that we went to that was called Blue Hole. And that was really amazing because the water was like vibrant electric blue, and there was just a massive drop off. So you'd be right on the edge of the coral with the fish, and then the sea just plummeted away from you, and that was really incredible.
Yeah, and look, for me, I would say, Hiriuli Island, which is just this little uninhabited island in Raja Ampat. The snorkeling there was just incredible. I couldn't believe it. And then West Papua, I would say, is really worth it. Kitty waterfalls, in the middle of nowhere, the jungle just surrounding you, and the villages visits in West Papua for me were especially touching. Like, yeah, it felt like we were going places that no one's been before.
Sounds magical. Love it. For say, because the itineraries have quite a bit of activity. So say if you're a first-time kayaker, is it quite easy to join and participate?
Yeah, the Palau kayaking, you don't need to have any experience. It certainly helps if you know how to kayak, but it's not the be-all and end-all. The distances were quite long, about 20 k's most days, but the water, even the open water, wasn't really choppy. And if you want to rest, you don't have to go out. You can stay on the Pinisi, chill out, read a book, go to the beach on the tender, and it's not a problem.
Look, there are some trips in our range that have more kayaking than others. So certainly we can help define between, whether you need experience. I mean, most of them are suitable for first timers, but you would want to have a little bit more of a handle of what's involved. Whereas if you were to join one which is not a dedicated snorkeling, you could just jump on a kayak for a 15-minute ride around some limestone crops, and that would be your kayaking. So it really just depends on what your interests are.
Beautiful. We've got a question from Lisa. She said, I'm more focused on snorkeling than long kayaks. If there is a long kayak planned, is there any other option I could do, such as extra snorkeling or something else?
My answer to that is yes, because with the tenders, it does mean that, that if there are long kayaking, you could go to an area, someone would take you over to a snorkeling section, and then take you back to the boat later. So yes, that sort of flexibility can be worked in, or yeah, just set up on the beach and snorkel straight off. In a lot of areas, you'll find the snorkeling will be great straight off there anyway. So yeah, definitely options to not kayak all the way, all the time.
Great. Love the flexibility. And Suzanne has asked, can you talk about your single supplement policy?
Yep, sure. So it does depend on which trips you pick. But on a whole, we will try and match you with another single. If you definitely want a cabin to yourself, a single supplement is payable, but at the first instant, we will try and same-sex gender match for you. You might get lucky if no one booked, and you might get a cabin to yourself. But if you absolutely want a single supplement, then there is an amount payable. It's variable depending on what boat, what cabin type you pick, but we can certainly offer you that as well.
Amazing. Was there any other questions from those that have attended? I think I have one for Pam though. You mentioned free diving and it sounded like it was quite shallow. How shallow are we talking?
Oh, only a few feet. Yeah, not far at all.
Nice.
For example, my husband doesn't really love to snorkel. Well, he loves it, but he doesn't like the snorkel feeling in his mouth. So he spends most of his time swimming just with his mask and holds his breath, and will dive down a few feet, swim around, check out the fish, even go down to that plane wreck and then pop back up. Whereas I'm a bit more of a swim around on the surface and use the snorkel kind of girl. Yeah, so really easy.
And are there life jackets available? Say some people want to stay in the water a bit longer, but
Yes,
more
yes.
comfortable
Oh,
with
and something else I didn't mention when I was talking before too is the team did provide the inflatable noodles. So if you're not that confident with swimming around for a long, long period of time in the water and you want something to hang on to, there's noodles available, and that made it really easy and fun to just hang on and drift in the current or swim along with everybody with a bit of support.
Same in Raja Ampat as well.
Yeah.
Definitely the noodles are on board and available. I mean, you should be comfortable swimming, but certainly the device is there to help.
Lisa's also submitted another question. On an average day, how many hours snorkeling could we expect?
Well, I'm going to go with minimum kind of 3, unless you're on a at-sea day where you're moving. But I would think that you would spend at least 3 hours a day, and some days you will definitely do 2 snorkels. And in that time, when I say, some people stayed in the water for 3 hours and other people got in the Zodiac and went back to the boat after an hour. That's completely flexible. But yeah, the snorkeling focused trips, yeah, I would say, you could spend anywhere between 3 and 6 hours in the water a day pretty easily.
Yeah. And with the kayaking, we took our snorkeling gear in the kayaks with us every time we went out. So if there was an opportunity to stop somewhere and have a snorkel, we could. If you didn't want to, you could sit on the beach or you could keep paddling around. It was totally up to you.
Another question is there any diving instruction available?
Yes. Oh, not instruction, sorry. On most of the boats that we have, you would need to be qualified. We're not offering a dive training course. Some trips need more experience than others, like say around Komodo, the dive sites, the currents are quite strong, so you would need more experience there that you might need in another area. Yeah, at this point in time, I'm going to say that you would actually have to have the experience. There's no one on board. There's gear on board that you can hire. You can pay for dives on board. depending on weather and visibility, and if you want to. But in terms of actually doing a PADI diving course, I don't have anything at the moment that you could complete the diving course on.
Thanks, Rachel. I guess the alternative to diving would be able to do, like as you said, shallow free diving or just snorkeling.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've got a message from Rave. Can you share your experience about the Komodo Islands? Very interested. How many days you spend there? Were there any highlights? The hikes look good, so it seems like he's quite interested in the more land aspects.
Yeah. So yeah, look, with Komodo, there is that opportunity to get onshore quite a bit. And, depending on the time of year, obviously when you're around the dragons, it's a guided hike. There'll be a ranger and everything with you. And places like Palau and stuff, hiking up for a sunrise or a sunset, or going for walks on Rinka where you might be able to do that without a guide. But certainly, in terms of seeing a Komodo dragon, pretty enthralling sort of stuff. But I think, yeah, the thing is that there are that hiking opportunities and the landscape out there, the terrain, yeah, not so jungly. So you definitely get to do a bit more on land stuff.
Beautiful. I think that was all the questions that we had. Did you want to add any final points about both those destinations before we wrap up?
No, except to say that, both of them you'll get an amazing experience no matter what you choose. And the the traveling on the Pinisi itself, regardless of the destination, will also be a lifelong memory.
Yeah.
But
Amazing. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks, everyone.
thanks everyone for joining.
Bye.
Bye.